Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the podcast. If you love and support the work that we do, head to www.sexedwithdb.com and buy some of our hot new merch. Follow us on Instagram at sexedwithdbpodcast. And if you want to advertise with us, shoot us an email at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. This week's episode is a bonus episode with DaShaun Harrison. DaShaun is a non-binary abolitionist and community organizer based out of Atlanta, Georgia. They work as the lead organizer of Solutions Not Punishment Collaborative, aka SNAPCO. SNAPCO is a Black, trans, and queer-led collaborative that builds the power of Black, trans, and queer people to wage and win campaigns that force systematic divestment from the prison industrial complex and investment in the services that support them. Their mission is grounded in their commitment toward ending mass crisis of passive genocide, incarceration, and criminalization of Black trans women, other Black, trans, and queer people, and the larger Black community. DaShaun is now working to complete their forthcoming book, tentatively titled Belly of the Beast, which is set to be published next year. Let's give a warm welcome to DaShaun. Let's just go ahead and get started by you telling us a little bit about yourself, if you want to share your pronouns, a little bit about your background, and the work that you do with SNAPCO.
Yes. So I'm DaShaun Harrison. I use they, them pronouns. I am non-binary. So I have been organizing here in Atlanta for a little over 6 years now. When I first moved here to go to school at Morehouse College, I started organizing there back in 2014, and I've been organizing ever since. And so my work, I've done a lot of work here in the city around a lot of different things, around police brutality and police abolition, and going over sex workers' rights and sex work decriminalization, HIV decrim. I've done a lot of campus-based work. I've done a lot of work here, but my work specific to SNAPCO has been, I started working with SNAPCO in January of this year. So I've been at SNAPCO now for 6 months. Wow. I've been at SNAPCO for 6 months.
Happy 6-month anniversary.
It came so fast. We've been doing so much.
Right.
I've been working at SNAPCO now for 6 months, and my work has been specifically around sex work decrim and HIV decrim, specifically as it relates to Black trans women and other Black trans and queer folks, as that is the work that SNAPCO is centered around. So SNAPCO is a Black trans-led organization here in Atlanta. It's only local to Atlanta, so it's not like a regional organization or a national organization. It's only local, and we do work that is specific to bettering the world for Black trans people and Black queer people. And so that looks like being abolitionist and doing work around ending and closing jails in the city, doing work around a better world for sex work, a decriminalized sex work, a decriminalized HIV, so that folks have the space in the room to be able to, live and work freely without being criminalized, without being stigmatized. Mm. And so since January, my work has been specifically committed to that. It has been where I've worked with other Black trans folks and Black queer folks via coalition or collectives, whatever it might be, to do campaigns around those two things in particular. And right now, SNAPCO is in the middle of launching our sex work campaign with some of our collaborators, where we will be attacking the city, county, and state level to make sure that laws are put in place or are repealed to make sex work decriminalized for all folks, but especially for Black trans folks. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited about that, because so much of, as I'm sure you can guess, Georgia is a really conservative state. Mm-hmm. Even Atlanta is a terribly conservative state and city. And so because of that, so much of what happens here is there's a push for an end to sex trafficking, but that oftentimes is conflated with sex work, and
Right.
therefore even further stigmatized in the city and in the state and in the county. And so our work is going to be separating sex work from sex trafficking, being clear about the distinction between the two, and what the state, city, and county can do to not only shift their language, but also shift their policies to make the city and the state and the county safer for Black trans sex workers.
Absolutely. Wow. You really just laid it down. Thank you so much for explaining all of that.
That was
After
really hard.
yeah, yeah. Of course. Well, yeah, thank you again. And yeah, so definitely a lot of work that y'all are doing, definitely a lot of work to be done and a lot of work that you're working towards. Can you speak a little bit about kind of what so our listeners right now, are hopefully looking for a way to take action, right? Hopefully looking for a way to be involved, to do the work, to step up to the plate. And I'm wondering what kind of work or anti-racist actions in particular can listeners be taking that SNAPCO is kind of explaining to folks or kind of sharing knowledge and information for folks to be able to be, obviously with Black-led organizations, something that is very important first of all to say is that it's not the job of Black people to explain to non-Black people what it is they should be doing. So that's number one. But while you're here and while you're an expert in the work, if you wouldn't mind sharing some anti-racist actions that SNAPCO is kind of asking of folks or encouraging folks to do at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say some of these are specific to SNAPCO, but some of them are just my own.
Yes,
And I make
we
that
want both.
because yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make. But yeah, so right now, folks can absolutely be donating money first and foremost, right? Offering up resources that are monetary to not only to Black-led organizations, but also just to Black individuals, right? Because oftentimes organizations have protocols that they have to follow, which takes getting money to folks a lot longer than it would if you just donate directly to Black folks, especially Black trans and queer folks. So that's one of the biggest ways folks can be involved. Another way that folks can be involved is by offering up other resources, like offering up your home to folks who like making your home a safe home for protesters if they're being chased by police, or opening up your home to like Black folks in other ways, or opening up maybe if you own like a youth center or like whatever type of resource you have, making it available to Black folks, especially in this moment where it's time to capitalize off of the momentum, but also the amount of commitment that folks are showing to Black folks in this time. So being able to offer other resources and making yourself a resource and making yourself available to Black folks. And I think one of the biggest things that I'm offering folks, it's not necessarily true for SNAPCO, but it is true for me, is that I think it is imperative in this moment for white folks in particular to be showing up at these protests and to be putting their literal bodies on the line. Should that be required, right? Like Black folks have been, since we arrived in this country, have been consistently resisting and showing up against our own oppression. And I think that it is past time for white folks to show up and use their literal bodies as resources, right? Because we know that whiteness is a resource for white folks. It gives them access to being able to stand literally in between police and Black folks to stop a bullet, right? To stop police from shooting. So I think that right now is a really important time while folks are still out in the streets protesting, while organizations are now looking for more membership. It's time for white folks and non-Black people of color to show up at these protests and use their bodies as resources. Create barricades around Black folks, create lines between Black folks and the police, all different types of things to use your actual body, however you can, to stop police violence and to stop state-sanctioned violence. But also for, I think, all folks right now to be showing up and getting involved with their local organizations. There are so many orgs in cities across the country that are really in need, especially organizations like SNAPCO that are not regional or national, that could really use the membership, that could really use people's minds and brilliance and creativity and bodies and all the things in this space. And so I think right now is a really integral point for folks to show up in these organizations and really commit themselves. And I think it's important for me to note that showing up and being part of these orgs doesn't necessarily mean that you have to lead anything and that you have to be at the forefront of anything at all, but it means that there has to be some level of commitment that is going to push us closer to liberation. And right now, there are too many people, I think, that are comfortable with, especially white folks, that are comfortable with following a couple accounts here and saying hashtag Black Lives Matter here and there, and then, calling it a day. And while I don't think everyone has to be on the ground, I recognize that there are a lot of reasons why people can't be on the ground, especially in the middle of COVID-19. I do think that there is a responsibility for folks to do more than offer lip service, or do more than the bare minimum of following 2 or 3 Black people and hashtagging once or twice a week. And so, that looks like getting involved with an org and figuring out what their digital strategy is and asking to be a part of the digital strategy, or developing a digital strategy with you and your friends around educating white folks and building out political education for white folks. Or I saw one white person online this week say that it looks like disowning your family if they're unwilling to let go of their racism, right? Their anti-Blackness. And I know that some of these things sound really radical, or they sound really harsh, but what is worse is the actual experience of dealing with anti-Blackness across spectrums as Black people, right? And I think that there has to be a much greater commitment from white folks and non-Black people of color to Black liberation if we are ever going to see that freedom.
Just letting that sink in for a hot second. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that list. And like you said, yes, like things like, having these hard conversations with family members and really stating your values is challenging and also very necessary. I mean, I think we're at a kind of pinnacle moment here where you really see who, I feel like we saw that pinnacle moment in 2016 when Trump got elected, and then you're like, oh shit, I have serious problems with my relatives or people who I know who are voting for Trump. And now here's kind of a second, more intense, more on the line round of that, where it's okay, where the moments where people say well, let's just not talk politics. It's no, we're kind of done with that, and we've been done with that. And it's really time for people to step up and support. I mean, obviously it doesn't need to be said, but it shouldn't have taken countless Black lives being lost and consistently being lost every day amidst this, uprising, essentially necessary uprising, for people to be having these conversations, and yet here we are. So I don't know, that's my own kind of rant, but I'm very grateful that sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree. And I think that even to your point around, you pointed back to 2016, Trump's election. And I know so many Black folks, myself included, who would point us back to Ferguson in 2014 as a really pivotal moment. And I think that I'm really glad that you named that, because intentionally or not, I think it speaks to exactly how different our experiences really are. And therefore how important it is for non-Black people to be in relationship to and to respect the leadership of Black folks and Black organizers, because so many of us have been doing this work far longer than a lot of the newly engaged non-Black folks, right?
Right.
I'm glad that you said that, and that point was able to be made.
Yes, absolutely. You're totally right. And like non-Black people like myself, like unless we were having these conversations, this would never be brought up. Like we're all kind of in our own bubbles of social media, and I can have, or anyone can have, the most liberal group of friends that they want, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to understand and really hear Black experiences. And I think that's the whole point. And yes, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, we got a couple more questions here. One is, what kind of literature would you recommend that folks read, or kind of are there videos that you recommend that folks watch to learn more about anti-racism and specifically dismantling white supremacy? Are there kind of publications that you really go to, or are there certain articles or books or things that you as an organizer have found to be extremely helpful in engaging folks who may be interested but may not really completely be quite there yet?
Yeah. Well, I am a columnist and associate editor for Wear Your Voice magazine.
Yes.
Which is,
and I know
yeah.
this magazine. Do you know why? And I don't think I mentioned this before, but because I went to UC Berkeley with someone, a family member of the founder of Wear Your Voice.
Oh, wow. How
Yes.
cool. Ravneet is so cool. I love her so much, and she's so brilliant and so kind, and she really has a huge imagination for what the world can look like, and I value that so much about her, and so I'm thankful to be working there. But yeah, Wear Your Voice is, I think, one of, in my very biased but also unbiased opinion, is one of the most necessary publications that there is in the world right now. I think that we're publishing content that is not happening across most digital platforms, and I think that's really important, and that folks really should tune in to Wear Your Voice, especially because we're a Black and brown run and operated indie feminist publication, right? So there are so many like investors who are not interested in investing in our work because of the type of content we produce, and so it really is funded by our readers. And so I think that Wear Your Voice is absolutely one. But then there are places like Black Youth Project and Race Baiter, who I've written for before, both of them. There's Gaudim, there's Bitch Media, there is Color Block. There's so many, I think, really beautiful and brilliant indie publications that produce really great content, and those are just some. But in terms of like books and literature in that regard, instead of giving names, because I have so many that I could just offer right now, I'm just going to offer authors' names. So there's Kiase Lehman. There is I'm looking at names right now in front of my face. Angela Davis, of course, because I have books all around my house, and I'm just looking around right now. There's Angela Davis, of course. There's Jennifer Nash. There is Stokely Carmichael or Kwame Ture. There is Claudia Jones. There are so many brilliant Black folks. Toni Morrison, Daniel Black, Fanon. I love Fanon, and I really respect his work, and he's actually one of my favorite writers. I think that Michel Foucault is not a Black writer, but is a necessary writer in terms of understanding how prisons work and the function of prisons, and how prisons are not just the four walls. And so I think Michel Foucault, while very difficult to read because he is truly an academic, is a necessary person to read. And there's so many folks: Jeffrey McCoon, Marlon Riggs, E. Patrick Johnson, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Zora Neale Hurston. I'm just listing off so many Black authors who can read and should read, because these are the folks who have, set the table for all of us to be able to stand on, and who continue to add to the Black literary canon in ways that I can only hope to with my book. And yes, and I also just want to offer up Patricia Hill Collins. I love her a lot, and she is Black feminism would not be what it is if not for her. And so I always have to name her. And yeah, those are just some of my favorite Black authors right now, Black literary.
That incredible. Thank you so much. And let's take a hot sec to plug your book. So if you want to just kind of talk a little bit, if you are okay with that, about your
Yeah.
book and just what it's about and when it's coming out. And also at the end of that, if you can just share like where folks can find you and Snapco on social media and where folks can donate to your organization.
Yeah. So my book is tentatively titled Belly of the Beast. And the book is about anti-fatness and anti-Blackness as it relates to, or how they intersect, and as it relates to Black men, Black trans masc folks, and Black AMAB non-binary people. And so Black studies doesn't really ever talk about fat studies, and fat studies very much excludes Black folks in general, but especially Black folks who are not cis women. And so my work is going to be specific to trans and queer folks and just Black men in general, who are often left out of what it means to be navigating these two marginalized identities at once. And so I titled it Belly of the Beast because I'm referring to a literal belly as if to call upon the fatness of the person, and beast as to talk about the anti-Blackness that is in making Black folks who look like me animalistic or beastly. And so the book is going to be talking about a lot of different things. There will be a chapter on desirability politics. There will be a chapter on healthism and the medical industry. There's going to be a chapter on police brutality and what that looks like specific to us. So pointing back to 2014 again, talking about 2014 all the way up through now with George Floyd, how the media frames Black, fat, and larger folks who were murdered, and how most of the murders that became popularized between these years were of fat Black men, and what that means in the grand scheme of things of how police brutality or how fatness plays a role in the murders of Black folks in general, but Black men in particular. And so, yeah, it's going to be coming out next year, 2021. It was supposed to be coming out in summer of 2021, and it still might. But as I'm sure you can imagine, with the onset of COVID-19 and then this these recent uprisings that have been going on for about 2 weeks now, it's been really hard for me to write in this time.
Of course.
And so it's a possibility that it'll be pushed back until the fall, but that's not set in stone yet. But it will be out in 2021, and I'm really excited about it. I think that this is going to be really innovative and really different for both Black studies and fat studies. And I hope that the world is ready, and I hope that folks are that they read it with an open heart and open minds, and ready to engage the content. So yeah, that's my book, and
I cannot wait to read it. Also, thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, and thank you for giving me the space to talk about it. I'm really excited about it.
Of course.
And so yeah, if you are wanting to follow me online, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, I am DaShaun LH, so DaShaun LH. And then Snapco is Snap for Freedom, the number 4 Freedom, both on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So you can follow us there. And then you can donate to us by going to our website or going to paypal.me/Solutions Not Punishment Collaborative to donate to our organization.
Perfect. And one last thing, if I could ask you, I know this is a lot of pressure and people sometimes hate this question, but kind of if you have kind of like one final thing that you really hope folks who are listening get from this interview, what would that be?
I actually love that question. I always enjoy being asked that because it makes me think. But I think that my answer to that is one that I've been sticking with for the last few days, especially, and that is I want folks to open themselves up to having a greater imagination. When we talk about abolition, I know it becomes really hard for people to grasp because we can't imagine a world without prisons, a world without police, a world without borders, a world without ICE, a world without states and countries. And we can't imagine a world that looks so drastically different than the one that we have now. But I believe that it's possible, and I believe it's possible because I have an imagination that shows me that it is. And so I want, on top of reading the literature, of course, I really hope that folks are able to open themselves up to a greater imagination that will lead them to an understanding that abolition is possible. And not only is it possible, but that it can happen sooner than we think.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want to support DaShaun Harrison, their Patreon is patreon.com/DaShaun Harrison. That's DaShaun Harrison, HARRISON. Their Cash App is cash.me/$DaShaun Harrison. Venmo is at DaShaun-Harrison. And PayPal is paypal.me/DaShaun Harrison. You can find more about them and their portfolio on their website, DaShaunHarrison.com. Our creator, co-producer, sound engineer, and host is me, Danielle Bezalel, aka DB. Our co-producer and communications lead is Cathren Cohen. Our main logo and banner graphic were created by Andrea Forgacs. Our social media intern is Leslie Lopez. Our music theme is by Hook Sounds. Our ad music is by my stepdad, Bill Gant. Thank you so much to our featured guests, partners, and our listeners. If you're interested in advertising with us, email us at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. For more sex ed content, follow us on Insta @sexedwithdbpodcast. Tune in next time.